A beautiful day here in Zolder ahead of the third round of the Blancpain Sprint Series. It's time for the warm-up session that is 20 minutes long, and it's going to see the cars heading out onto the circuit ahead of the race that we've got coming up later on today. My name is Jack Nichols. Alongside me in the commentary box is John Watson. Track temperature 31 degrees, air temperature already 21.5 degrees, and it's only 11:15.
And we're going to have another screamer here this afternoon, and we might have a cracking race as well. Circuit looking magnificent, and really since Friday when everybody rocked up here to Zolder, and wonderful little circuit it is, 4.0 kilometers, 2.49 miles, 16 corners. It was 37 Celsius Friday afternoon. I mean, the cars didn't have to go on track to be overheating, just sitting around. It was that warm. Yesterday, a more moderate day, still a beautiful afternoon. And of course, this afternoon will probably be between the two in terms of temperature, which of course just plays to the areas of this racetrack that absolutely hammer a race car, i.e. brakes.
Yep, it was a real braking circuit, this one.
Well, Jack, I walked down the pit lane this morning, and even with my wonderful, I can't say freebie sunglasses, I actually bought these sunglasses, but I was blinded by the sunlight reflecting off the brand new discs on every race car, because they will wear them out. That's how hard it is on brakes. They need the maximum thickness of the disc. They need the maximum pad they can get. They're going to do a bit of bedding in this 40 or 20-minute warm-up session, and that's going to be the focal point. Bed those brakes in, just a quick check on what the car is doing, put it back in the pits, and look forward to start at 3:15.
Yes, even when we come here in April, as we have done the last couple of years, brakes are an issue. So in this sort of temperatures, it's going to be even more important today. There you can see the cars lining up on the grid. In the pits, I should say. You can see the 55 car there, the Attempto racing machine of Kevin Estre and Rob Bell, with a nice sun protector over it. Couldn't think of the word there, but there is car number one, Robin Freitz at the wheel. He and Laurence Van Thor commanding yesterday as they get ready to head out on the circuit. A new livery for this year, and as they have done for the last couple of years, they've run a design competition to run the cars, to design the cars ahead of the Spa 24. Cars making their way to the pit exit already, and we've still got, I think, a minute and a half before the circuit gets underway, so they're happy to go down towards the exit of the pit lane, no doubt.
Yeah, they're going to get down there, want to be out on track, get as much clear air as possible. It is going to be about bedding in brakes, new discs, new pads, and then just getting a feel for the change in overnight conditions on the racetrack. There's been another event taking part here this morning, so the circuit will be different rubber used by different championships, and that does make a small change to the circuit. The Pirelli rubber that we use in Blancpain, both in sprint and in enduro, wants to get its rubber back on the track.
Absolutely. To attention to all teams, they've got an additional judge of fact at turn number 9, which I think is the chicane. I'll have a think about that in a moment. But first, let's hear from Bruce Jones, who's caught up with Maximilian Buch.
Maxi Buch, it was a good day yesterday for Bentley. No victory, but at least a podium result. Can you step forward from there?
Yeah, from the podium result, we are pretty happy because it's the first for us in the Sprint Series this year. That was one of the main goals from starting the championship with a new car. And I think for today we should be quite okay for the race. I think we have a good position at the start from P3. Maybe we can gain something already at the start, and then we will have a look how it looked like after the pit stops.
It feels already this morning it's going to be a warmer day than yesterday. Of course, it's very warm on Friday. How confident are you? Is that going to help the Bentley or maybe not?
It's not helping us, but I think it's the same for everybody. I think everybody wants to have a bit cooler conditions, but it is how it is, and I think we can deal with it.
Okay, best of luck. Thank you, Maxi.
Well, one of the things that we should point out is the car that Max Buch is in, the number 84 car, is the very car that he had that mammoth accident at Brands Hatch just a month ago. So the basic tub, the basic chassis of the car was undamaged, but all the bits beyond that, the front bulkhead forward had to be replaced. Even bits of the engine were damaged in that accident. It was a mighty big accident, but now the car back running competitively. Max Buch, his confidence is back. The other thing that a number of teams have worked very hard on here this weekend is to ensure that when the pit stop is made in this 1 hour race we're going to see this afternoon, that the driver getting back in to finish the race is on a brand new set of Pirelli tyres. That's going to be key to the second part of this race. So the leading teams have worked hard to preserve. So Robin Friends, for example, who will start in the winning Audi from the qualifying race on Saturday, will not be on a brand new set of rubber. It'll be at the best of the rest of what the team have, but Laurens Vanthoor will do.
Okay, that's very interesting. That's something to keep an eye out on later on. Good work, John. As the cars are now out on the circuit, there is the 88 in the hands of Albert von Turn Taxis, who had a good run yesterday, overtaking and challenging with the GT Russian team Mercedes. They ended up finishing in 11th position, so just outside the top 10. Points for the qualifying race only go down to 6th position. So they were quite a way off the points, and there's only a couple available. But today they're starting in 11th, a good position for to take some points.
Peter Cox reminded me this morning that 33 years ago, some bloke started 17th on the grid in a race, and he won that race. And Peter Cox is going to take inspiration from that. He thinks, given a fair day and a good tailwind, this Lamborghini could be standing in the winner's podium.
That would be another fluke to add to the history of Zolder. As he makes his way around. It's Albert von Turn Taxis at the wheel, and it'll be von Turn Taxis starting that car later on. So if he can keep out of trouble in the opening stages, then they do have a decent chance. Peter Cox, a local man to here. He is Dutch, but he's only from sort of half an hour the other side of the border to this track, and he's had success here in the past, winning a couple of years ago along with the Slovakian driver whose name escapes me as he comes down through the left-hander.
Anyway, he retired, then he became an unretired driver, and then he retired again. But this car is a quick car, and Albert von Turn Taxis, we've seen this year, really stepping up and matching, whether it's Nicky Katzberg, who's been his co-driver so far. Look at Peter Cox in the garage. So Albert von Turn Taxis coming out to complete what is his first flying lap.
Stefan Rosina.
I knew it was him.
He and Peter Cox won here a couple of years ago. There you saw Marcus, a little bit out of shape there on under braking. The Albert von Turn Taxis keeps it together. He's gone purple in the first two sectors. He's the first man out there to really set a competitive lap time, but all the other guys he's going quicker than as well. So across the line comes Rosina, now it's in my head now, von Turn Taxis, a 32.5, which is a sort of reasonable race pace. Runs wide, he's pushing though, isn't he?
Yes, I mean, and this
is him getting out of shape on the brakes here.
On the brakes, braking late, coming up into turn 15. The back end just locking up momentarily, and he gets his apex. He makes the corner, and just maybe the rear tyres not quite up to the level of temperature of the front. That was his first flying lap. As we look at the Bentley, and both Bentleys were running strongly. This is the 84 car. Vincent Abril, the protégé of Olivier Panis, French star of years gone by. Well, let's say a year or two anyway.
Yeah.
And Bentley's looked competitive here all through the weekend. Particularly Tom Dillman, interesting. Tom Dillman's in the car, in the 83 car, and comparing the style of driving between the 84 and the 83. Dillman, coming from a single-seater background, very much more physical in the way that he was literally throwing the car around, making the car dance to his inputs on the steering wheel and throttle, whereas Abril or Maximilian Buch are much, much more progressive and smooth in the way that they sort of get the car to ease into the apexes.
Yeah, that's very interesting, isn't it? And we've still got Robin Frients, who's learning his way around the nature of a GT car as we go on board with the 84 coming down into the right-hander. Vincent Abril at the wheel. Up in front of him is Tom Dillman in the 83 Bentley. Purple first sector for Christopher Mies, purple middle sector for Stefan Otelli. He and Raquelme are going to have their work cut out today. They'll be starting right down at the back after Raquelme, I mean, it seemed to me, sort of caused his own accident yesterday by moving across on the run down to turn one.
I mean, we saw the replays of it. From what we could see, I think that Raquelme did get tagged, which caused him to spear off to the left, and that caught Frank Stippler. Regrettably, Stippler's car caught and Marshall's pulled cars back behind it, but he happened just to catch the very end of that. and did a significant amount of damage to the chassis, so much so number 4 will not be competing this afternoon.
Yeah, that's a real shame, as we see Marcus Winkelhock buckling in. Stefan Ortelli's gone the quickest of anyone at 31.461, but Vincent Abril's just gone faster in the first sector than Ortelli by some 0.4 of a second. This across the line is Nicolas Armindo in the Attempto Racing McLaren, making his first appearance of the season alongside Philip Vlasic. So Vlasic has had 3 co-drivers in the 3 races so far, and that's a car that did well yesterday, and for the first time in the Sprint Series.
That car is a race-winning car right now. 2 really good drivers, Marco Seefried, point out Seefried, and Norbert Siedler. They were quick all weekend, and they reckon that in terms of out-and-out speed, there's little to choose between the two, the Audi and the Ferrari. But if they get ahead of the Audi, even Audi acknowledge they would struggle to find a way past the Ferrari. The only way may come during the pit stops, which are mandatory, but there could be a big battle at the front, and it may not be the walk in the park for the number 1 car as we look at the number 3 car with Christopher Mies behind the wheel.
Yeah, the number 3 car is about to go very quick as it comes through at 31.4 last time around for Stefan Ortelli. He's done purple in sector 1 and 2, and he now's at 30.5, which is quicker than any race lap we saw yesterday. So actually it was 100th of a second slower than Robin Freitz and Laurens Vanthoor's quickest race lap from yesterday. So a good lap time there from Stefan Ortelli, showing that that number 3 Audi has got the pace, but they're going to have their work cut out, as we see the 333 Rinaldi Ferrari guys. And it is great to see them running towards the front of the order this year in both sprint and endurance, because they, you know, after the Vadim Kogai incident last year, that sort of lime green Ferrari became a bit of a sort of symbolism.
Yes.
But now it's won a race in Blancpain endurance at Monza, and it's been on the podium here in sprint.
And Vadim Kogai really still very, very much a part of that team. Not in the driving seat, but maybe driving the team in a sense, financially as well as in other ways. So he is still very much a part of that Rinaldi 333 Ferrari team.
Great to see them running towards the front of the order. Siedler, they're the only car yet to set a lap time actually, but hopefully they'll be heading back out on track soon enough. Albert Fontaine and Taxis has just set the fastest final sector of anyone, so that's a good effort there from Albert. 6th quickest at the moment. Stefan Ortelli and Christopher Mies, the top 2. Dolby is in 3rd place at the moment, Craig Dolby in the MRS Nissan, and they had a bit of a tough race yesterday. Ended up finishing in 6th position, which was decent enough for points haul, but they weren't quite as far up at the front as they were at Brands Hatch.
No, but you know, they got slightly compromised at the very start with the incident on the start-finish straight, so that had a bearing. They also had a slight problem. The pit stop wasn't quite as efficient as they'd hoped it to be, so they lost a little bit of time, and they then came under pressure in the final lap. Cacabueno making close contact in the final sort of 15 and 16, that last right-left onto pit straight, so much so that Sean Walkinshaw said this morning he had 260 degrees of lock, and I just agreed with him. I said, that's an awful lot, isn't it, Sean? So anyway, but he got well sideways, and in fact the Brazilian BMW kept pushing the Nissan, and that straightened the car out, which enabled the Nissan to take that final point scoring position. Cacabueno
ended up in the gravel here last year after a similar incident, and it was René Rast and Laurens Vanthoor who came together here last year, didn't they, in the qualifying race, coming down towards the final corner. I think Rast and Vanthoor coming together, and there was a bit of
difference of opinion.
Yeah, difference of opinion after that, wasn't there?
I think it was Rast was trying to pass Vanthoor.
Yeah, for the lead of the race. Here is the number 1 car in the hands at the moment still of Robin Freitz, double champion in Formula Renault, winning the 2-litre Euro Cup class and then the Formula Renault 3.5 championship as well. Won his debut race in 3.5 back in 2013 around Aragon, and he won his first ever GT race as well that he actually managed to compete in after he knocked them out of competing at all in the opening race of the weekend in Nogaro. The opening round of the championship, in fact, after a crash in qualifying. 10 minutes to go, halfway through the warm-up session here. Stefan Ortelli, quickest man of anyone, but Vincent Abril, 2nd quickest in the Bentley, that's going to be starting in 3rd place. And Bentley really are there or thereabouts in terms of pace as well, along with the Audi and the Ferrari.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, the key is going to be track position based on the results from the qualifying race on Saturday. And the hope is that we'll get all the cars into turn one without contact. My hope is we're going to get all the cars out of turn one still actually running undamaged, and let's try and avoid unnecessarily ambitious maneuvers when everybody is so compacted in that quite narrow start-finish straight, because the barriers on the pit wall and the barriers on the other side of the track, there's little scope for manoeuvrability.
Yep, into the pits comes Robin Freitz, straight on and into the pit lane. There's Max Boot getting ready to take over the 84 Bentley when Vincent Abril decides to bring it in. Caca Bueno is out at the wheel. We saw Sergio Jimenez waiting to take over a couple of moments ago. And yes, so I briefly mentioned it earlier, but there's an additional judge of fact at turn 9, which is the chicane known as the Villeneuve chicane, after the crest of the hill and down through the left-hander, and I presume that's to look at track limits, because it's always one you can push at.
I mean, an interesting point made this morning was that on the pole winning lap, Laurens Vanthoor, and I made the comment, actually I thought, wow, he's taking a little bit of a liberty there, and some teams felt that that's maybe where he picked up the small margin of time that was enough to give him that provisional or then confirmed pole position for the qualifying race. So it's a very fine judgment as to what is taking an advantage and gaining an advantage, as opposed to finding yourself maybe forced into an area rather than doing it as a premeditation.
Caca Bueno down into the right-hander and then out through the little kink up towards the final chicane at 15 and 16. On the brakes, and he stays out again. Sergio Jimenez is waiting for the car in the pit garage. We saw a shot of him a couple of moments ago, but he's too busy chasing down Nicky Meyer-Melnoff at the moment. Across the line comes the Brazilian BMW, and it's a 32.605 for them. And they haven't quite shown the pace this weekend that they managed at Brands Hatch, despite it this circuit being a reasonably decent one for the BMWs.
I mean, I think it's a circuit a bit like Brands Hatch, very much in the mould of the BMW sort of concept. It's a higher downforce car. It isn't the quickest car in a straight line. That's the trade-off you get between going for that kind of extra squelch on the car. Nevertheless, they haven't quite shown the performance, and if you think back to Paul Ricard with Muller and Maxime Martin in the car on a circuit that probably was good for the BMW, but maybe wasn't as strong as Brands or Zolder might be, the potential in that car is there. It is a race-winning car.
Yep, absolutely. So there is Vincent Abril.
They're getting younger by the day, aren't they? I mean,
still only 4 laps completed by the 333 Rinaldi Ferrari. Whether they're just saving their tyres or something like that, because they have been out and then back in again. So it'll be interesting to see if they have a problem or whether they are just keeping an eye on things and aren't too fussed about going out. We've seen that before with the HTP Mercedes team last year. Did a lot of just not going to bother with warm-up because we're happy with where we are.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I went past the pits this morning, and Marco Seefried was standing around, very comfortable, not any action going on the pits. So I would think that all they've done is just simply go out. If they're putting in new discs and pads, I'm assuming that they have done so. When I was in their garage, their wheels and tyres were on the car. But I would assume that, like everybody, they're on the limit, and they've got a good car. They know they've got a good car. They've got 2 strong drivers. They're on the front row of the grid. All they've got to do is make sure that they get out of turn 1, worst of all, in second place.
Yep, there's the driver change as Caca Bueno hands over to Sergio Jimenez, and Albert von Turnen Taxis hands over to Peter Cox in the 88 Reiter Engineering Lamborghini. And they're going to have their work cut out today, starting from 11th place as we go on board now with Sean Walkinshaw at the wheel of the MRS GT Bentley, Nissan I should say, running in 6th position at the moment. Just been outpaced by the Bentley of Jules Simkowiak, who's gone up to 5th as we go on board with Walkinshaw. Then coming down in towards turn 1 through the left-hander that has a kind of little turn before the turn almost.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of options in going into turn 1, and the best option is the maximum speed off the corner. But how you manage that is an individual thing very much so between different drivers. They like a car that's maybe a little bit less aggressive on the turn-in, and they use the rear of the car to assist the whole rotation thing. But is that fluids coming from beneath the Lamborghini?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what's happening there.
Looking under the engine.
I felt it looked a bit sort of smoky when it came in, but I might have made that up. Through comes the 55 Attempto Racing McLaren, Kevin Estre and Rob Bell. It's Bell at the wheel, and I mean, they're going to have their work cut out today because they'll be starting last on the grid.
They were also a sort of a victim or whatever of the incident on pit straight. As the lights went out, Kevin Estre ended up with 2 punctures, and he ended up having to either park the car or he couldn't get it back to the pits with 2 tyres deflated, punctured, and that was a disappointment because, again, we've seen with the McLaren 650S, it really is a big step forward on the 12 MP4 12Cs. And Kevin Estre and Rob Bell, really strong driver partnership.
Marco Bononomi into turn 1. There now is local man Laurens Vanthoor, purple in the middle sector. Pretty good first sector as well. So are we going to see Vanthoor jump to the top of the timing screens as he exits the final chicane and heads down towards the line? Across he comes, and it is first at 1 minute 30.363.
Yeah, they're sort of in the team. They've got a nickname for him now.
Really?
They call him Laurens 3/10.
Okay. Because he just goes and finds 3/10.
Yeah, basically quicker than everybody else in the team.
There is the 84 Bentley, which is now in the hands of Max Buch, former Blancpain Endurance Series champion 2 years ago. Less than 3 minutes to go in this warm-up session ahead of round 3 of the championship. Buch on the brakes into the chicane and out across the line. And they were so frustrated to miss out at Brands Hatch because they felt the Bentley was going to be really strong at Brands Hatch. They thought it would really suit the medium speed corners, and there is the fluid we were looking at.
But there was the fluid beneath it, and now the car's in the garage. I think that's a touch of some synthetic, extremely expensive engine oil. That's low friction, which is probably worth another 20 horsepower. But it shouldn't be on the pit lane.
No.
That's a problem.
Yep.
Can they get it fixed in time? Our man on the pit lane might be able to tell us that.
Yep, absolutely. 2 minutes to go in this session. Coming down towards the chicane, it's getting a little bit busy as Jules Simkowiak is up behind one of the Brazilian BMWs that flashes through and over the crest of the hill. Down through the left-hander of 7. And Simkowiak has been pretty impressive so far this season.
He's been impressive all weekend here. He's done a really good job. Here's he got with Tom Dillman. There is Albert.
Seems happy enough.
Oh, he makes more faces than
Jim Carrey.
Possibly. But anyway, Tom Dillman is driving alongside Simkowiak and a little bit more aggressive, as I pointed out earlier.
Yeah.
But you're learning that this is a car that you've got to be a little bit more patient with. It's not a highly strong single-seater. It's a more compliant GT car.
Robin Freitz and the WRT squad checking over the #1 car that it will be starting from pole position later on today. And there is the Bentley crew watching on their pit wall. Vincent Abril on the left-hand side. As here is the 77 BMW, currently in the hands of Attila Abreu, swinging it through the left. No, apologies, it's the 0 car of Sergio Jimenez. Team manager of car 6 has been asked to go to the stewards at the end of warm-up, and that will be Hans Reiter. No, it's not. It's Marcus Winkelhock, isn't it? It's the 6. It's the 6 Audi.
Yeah. And Nicky Meyer-Melnhoff. So
yeah.
We're not sure whether that's a pit lane infringement or track. I mean, normally if it's a track infringement, that would come up as such. But it's number 6, so I assume it's something that has occurred
speeding in the pits or something like that.
Pit lane or pit lane infringement in terms of what work was being carried out on a car.
So 6 seconds to go before the checkered flag comes out. This is Bernd Schneider. He's done personal bests in sectors 1 and 2. Now the German swings it into the final corner as the checkered flag man swings his flag with aplomb. Across the line comes Schneider, and he jumps up to 7th place. But there's a big old gap really from 4th down to 5th. Is about half a second. The top 4 covered by half a second, and then the And then 4th to 5th is another half a second.
I mean, I don't think you can read an awful lot into these times, because compared to qualifying, the gaps are much greater. So I don't think anybody is really going out for a sort of simulation of a qualifying lap. It's more about just that final assessment of the car, having had work carried out overnight, and in most cases new pads, new discs fitted, so you've got to bed those in. You've got to ensure that you don't actually do it too quickly where you can glaze the disc, and then you've got to go through that whole process again to get the disc deglazed. But nevertheless, surprise, surprise, quickest of all, Laurens Vanthoor in the number 1 HWRT Audi.
A 1 minute 30.363 for him. Let's see if there's any improvement from Sergio Jimenez. Across the line comes the 0 Brazilian BMW. No, he remains in 12th position, improves his lap time, but doesn't improve his placing. So with Norbert Siedler and Marco Seefried having only done 4 laps, is that enough time to bed in a new set of brakes? If you do it right?
If you do it correctly on this circuit, you'd probably do it within about half a lap, because it's so aggressive on the brakes.
Yeah.
The key is not to do it aggressively. The key is you've just got to get a certain amount of temperature, and then you have to basically fade the brake away. With ABS, it's slightly more complicated, and one of the problems that some of the teams had was, in fact, they didn't get all the air out of the ABS system when they were bleeding the brakes. So it's not just the brake itself, it's the ABS system's got to be bled to. So it's a more complex progress, but I suspect, I'd like to think, that there's no problem with the 333 Ferrari, and that's just a sign of confidence from the team across the board.
Yep. The number 6 Phoenix Audi as well has only completed 7 laps in the session and has not set a particularly quick one either, and they've been asked to go to the stewards, the boss of the Phoenix squad. We go on board with the Bentley that rumbles down the pit lane in the hands of Maximilian Buch. He'll make his way down to the first set of garages here on the right hand side. Pull in, cut the engine, and we'll push you back into the garage, Maxi. 3rd quickest in that session.
Yeah, and that's just, again, WRT just showing the professionalism. They make the pit stop to end up the warm-up, and they use that as a driver change practice under, the car is hot at this stage. It's all right doing it when the car's cold, but when the car comes in and everything is much up to race temperature, it is a different deal.
In comes Sergio Jimenez, who will be starting from 7th on the grid later on today. Well, it'll be his teammate Caco Bueno who will actually be starting the car. As you see the front of the Bentley, 84. In comes Jimenez. Both of the BMWs in the pits then. Where did the 77 car? Attila Abreu ended up in 10th place, so ahead of Sergio Jimenez in that session. But it's very tight down that, actually, down that pack from 7th down to 12th is covered by 0.2 of a second, so that's pretty tight. Let's hear now from Pierre Dudonné. He's the man who runs the WRT operation, and he is talking to Bruce Jones.
Pierre Dudonné, a good morning so far, 1st, 2nd and 4th for WRT, but of course you're only running 3 cars today. What was the eventual damage to the number 4 in that start line shunt yesterday?
Well, chassis damage, and of course it couldn't be repaired on the spot, so we lost 1 car yesterday, yeah.
And how damaged also was the number 3? Of course that was involved in the same incident.
Yeah, quite a lot of damage, as everybody could see, but that was body work and parts we could change. The chassis was intact.
Different running conditions today, quite warm already here, but you seem on top of it with the 1, 2 and 3 cars.
Yes, of course, the warm-up, you cannot draw too much conclusion from it, but we know we are in a good position, especially with the car number 1. Starting from pole in a sprint race is always an advantage, in the front row. So we're looking good. We're trying to bring back car number 2 also, which had a good race, but start from the pit lane yesterday. So it's in 9th position, I think. So that car also can score well. And of course the number 3 car with the 2 Stefan, they were out of the race at the first turn, so it will be a bit more difficult for them. But we've seen in the warm-up that they're highly competitive. So,
well, look, best of luck for your home race with your 3 cars.
Thank you, and we hope this will be a good, clean race and even full at the same time.
Let's hope so. Thank you, Pierre.
So Pierre Dieudonné there, the man in charge of the WRT squad. And as Bruce says, first, second and fourth for them, split by the Bentley Continental of Team HTP, Maximilian Buch and Vincent Abril slotting in third position. Completing the top 5 is the 88 car of Albert Fontaine and Taxis. I think he set that lap time, so that's a good effort from Albert. Peter Cox going out for a little trip just to get his eye in. 6th place for Kevin Estre and Rob Bell, Alexei Karachev and Bernd Schneider in 7th place, then Simkoviak and Dillman in 8th, about 7/10 of a second slower than their teammates in the sister Bentley. Tiller Abreu and Valdena Brito completing the top 10. Then in 13th place we've got the GT Russian squad, Alexei Vasiliev and Marco Asma, Nikolai Armindo and Filip Vlasic down in 14th position, then the Fjordbeck brothers, and then the two guys who didn't, the two cars I should say, who didn't really set a lap time, Mehrmanov and Marcus Winkelhock, and Marco Sievried and Norbert Siedler did a lot of laps, did a lot of pit stops and not many laps. So that concludes the warm-up session here at the Zolder circuit. A great track, fantastic to be here at a classic venue, and circuits in the woods are always good. We've been to Brands Hatch in the woods, now we're here at Zolder in the woods.
Do you recognise the big difference between Brands Hatch and Zolder?
I had to come further to get here?
You probably did, but the trees here are, the majority of which are coniferous.
Okay.
Which means they're pine and pine family, as opposed to deciduous, which shed their leaves in the autumn and then regrew them again in the spring. I thought Nature Watch might come to Blancpain GT Sprint.
No, it's very nice. It's always good to add that in, isn't it? So those are the differences between the trees, between Brands Hatch and Zolder. The differences on the track, though, are going to be found out later on today, whether the number 1 car of Robin Freitz and Laurens Vanthoor can continue with their success. Here they'll be starting on pole position for the main race in Zolder coming up later on today.